Federico Restrepo, pleasure to meet you finally. This is our first time meeting, and I am super excited to learn more about you, about Impact Hub down there, and about Colombia as a whole, and kind of where you see things going in the future. But let me put a pause on myself and kind of pass the mic to you. Please tell the world, who are you, where you're from, what you're working on.
Hi, Grant. I'm very happy to be with you. I'm very grateful that you invite me. A bit about myself. So, as you mentioned, my name is Federico Restrepo. I'm from Colombia, which is a country in South America, and a city called Medellín, which is very known because of narcos, but we have much more to offer than that, actually. A bit about myself. I study here in Colombia. When I was around 22 years old, I decided to travel the world, and I started working for an international organization and working for social and environmental development projects around the world, specifically in Africa and Southeast Asia, mainly for women empowerment and youth employability. I got to learn a lot. It was amazing on that side. And then I decided to come back to Colombia because I saw so many Colombians that were talking bad about our country, but never doing anything about making it a better place, which is something that happens not only to Colombia, but to many South American countries or Africans or Southeast Asian, is that the brightest minds always go abroad and stay living in those countries. But I decided to come back, and I created my first startup, which is called Energía Vectorial. And it's a company that we focus on decarbonizing mobility by electrifying cars. So we take any car that is in the street and we make it electric. Land Rovers, Mustangs, any type of car, trucks, buses. And that got me started a lot in the impact and entrepreneurial world. And then I work around Impact Hub. So do you want me to go right away into Impact Hub, or you got something?
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to say, what a backstory, man. Would you mind mentioning which countries in Africa and Southeast Asia you were in? I've been to South Africa and Namibia, and I've only been to kind of northeastern Asia, like Japan, Korea, China, but I'd like to. So yeah, which countries were you in there?
So I've traveled to 65 countries so far. And I had a great chance to live in different countries around the world. So I have had the chance to live in Colombia, in the United States, in the Netherlands, and in Australia for at least a year. And I have lived in other countries for around 2-3 months, like Kenya, Malaysia, Singapore, Brazil, Germany. I specifically worked in these projects that I was mentioning: Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, Uganda, and in Southeast Asia was Thailand, Brunei, Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia. But that's a bit of the world that I had the chance to see.
I am jealous of your passport right now, but one day I'll get to that level too. But yeah, I'd like to hear more about specifically what you're doing with Impact Hub in Medellín and Cali. I think for people who have, one of the first episodes we shot was in Mexico, and we got to interview some people at Impact Hub CDMX, and I think it's very easy to assume that every Impact Hub does the same thing in different countries, but that's not close at all. Everyone, similar, kind of vibes of different, same goals, but they work with very different founders, very different programs, very different organizations. So give me kind of the background of what Impact Hubs in Colombia have been up to recently.
Yeah, so because of all my travels, I met a lot of impact hubs around the world, and because of the project that I manage, I was able to partner with them and got to see the communities that they were building. So when I was here in Colombia with my startup, I was looking for startup support, but not from the tech space, but from the impact space. But everybody here in Colombia was talking to me about growth, tech, and everything, but that was not what we needed. So I looked for Impact Hub here in Colombia and saw that in Medellin it didn't exist. So I decided to create Impact Hub in Medellin in order to support founders that were focused on sustainability and impact-based startups instead of just tech startups. So that was back in 2018, late 2018. And since that moment, so as you know, and as you mentioned in the previous episode, so Impact Hub is a global network and it's kind of a social franchise. So we do have our guiding principles, but each Impact Hub in each city has different founders. And because of the founders' vision and skills and perspectives, Impact Hubs tend to have different implementation models in different cities. All of them, we follow the same guiding principle of we support entrepreneurial ecosystems for impact and sustainability. That's the guiding principle. Here in Medellin, because of my background and my co-founder's background, we decided to focus in 4 things. The first one is gender. So I have a master's degree in sustainable development with a minor in gender studies. Because of my programs, my experience in Africa and Southeast Asia, mainly in gender, I got very passionate about how men can be part of the solution of the problem that we have created with gender. So we have a great focus on gender. So we have a big program for women-owned businesses. It's actually the largest program for women-owned businesses in Colombia. Every year we support around 800 businesses here. That program got the attention from the Canadian government, and they grant us an award because of the impact that it had, and they asked us to adapt the program to victims of the war here in Colombia. So we created a program that is called Reflorece, or Reflourish in English, that supports the creation of businesses of victims of the war in Colombia, so they generate economical autonomy and they're able to reintegrate themselves into the social life. And the third focus that we have in gender is that we have the only entrepreneurial program for the LGBTQI plus community, supporting sexually diverse owners in their businesses. So that's a very cool focus that we have here. The second one is climate. My background and my other startup is a clean tech startup. And that program, we focus on mitigation, adaptation, circular economy, or ecosystem regeneration. So startups that have solution to impact one of these 4. And we support them in scalability models, tech solutions, and investment readiness. That's mostly it. We have a big focus in agro. Colombia is a big agricultural country. So we support small and medium agro and agro-industrial enterprises in strengthening their go-to-market strategy. So they are able to grow their business and access new markets in the United States, in Europe, and in the Middle East. And the last focus that we have is the internationalization, or going global. So because of our global network, it's very easy for us to connect with other impact hubs around the globe and generate international missions. So Colombian companies can go to different countries and different cities to, let's say, research, understand, and expand their business there in a more safe way. You know that being an entrepreneur is always risky. So this helps them kind of soft land there and understand the market in a better way.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is already risky enough, but now being an international entrepreneur and going across borders is a whole other thing as well. So just to make sure that I didn't miss anything, you said your kind of targets down there are women-owned businesses, LGBTQ, agriculture, and international connection.
Yes, exactly that.
Awesome. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I like it, dude. You guys are busy. I'm still thinking about you like converting cars from combustion to electric, and I don't know how you do it all. But I wanted to come back to a point that you talked about, you mentioned earlier. I think you're very right that most Americans, when they think of Colombia, they probably have the perception of, Narcos, but they forget that show was filmed in the like 80s, 90s, or it was about a time in the 80s, 90s, and like we're 20, 30 years away from when that happened. So things have changed a lot. Talk to me about how some of the things have changed, about some of the government changes, business change, and how, it's affected society down there.
Yeah, Colombia has gone through a lot. Like we had a war for the last 70 years, like a kind of a civil war against guerrilla war groups. And as you mentioned, in the 80s was the peak of the drug war. So Pablo Escobar and Narcos was I think it's a very good show actually. And it shows in a very cool way the things that happen here, also remembering the victims and everything. So I think it's a very informative and educational show for people to understand, but you need to take it a bit farther in understanding that Colombia is we're in the process of generating another part of Colombia that people hasn't been able to see. So the main cities of Colombia are Bogotá and Medellín. Those two are the largest city, Bogotá being the capital, and is one of the largest entrepreneurial startup and tech hubs in Latin America, behind Sao Paulo and Santiago de Chile. So we are the third one, and if we count also Central America with Mexico, behind the Mexico City, right? So it is a huge tech hub, and it has a lot of advantages because of the weather is one of them. So we attract a lot of people to come and work here, mostly in tech backgrounds. So people find very great places here with very affordable prices because the exchange rate is very good for people that earns in dollars and in euros. So it also is very good for that. And we have great places in the coast in the Caribbean. Medellin is a very friendly city for tourism and for digital nomads as well. So we offer a lot of services that are greatly appreciated for digital nomads. And something that digital nomads cannot find when they go to Africa or Southeast Asia, mostly if you're an American, that you stay in the same time zone, which is of great value. If, as a digital nomad, as me, you love American sports, I'm a big fan of basketball and football, so I need to stay in this time zone to be able to catch up on stuff. So there's been a huge transformation. Something that a couple of researchers here have shown is that in places where there's a lot of violence, it tends to be a huge wave of cultural initiatives and entrepreneurs that focus their initiatives on culture. So there were two things that helped Medellin survive this violence because of the drugs were culture and all the cultural initiatives that the people have as a response to the violence. And the second one were the big corporations in Medellin. So even though the capital of Colombia is Bogotá, the largest corporate group is from Medellin, which has the largest bank, the largest insurance company, the largest construction company, and the largest food company in the country, that they are now all around Latin America. And they started to invest a lot in social initiatives, providing people with skills and knowledges and other ways of sustaining themselves. So that also helped Medellin get out of that violent stage of the 80s and the 90s. And right now, Medellin, thanks to a lot of initiatives that we have had here, like our transportation system, which is called Metro, Ruta N, which is our innovation center, EPM, which is our utility company and invest a lot in energies and everything. we have been able to not only attract startups, but also attract big corporations to set themselves here. And that has generated an ecosystem that allows for more innovation. And we are in the process. So we're not there yet. I wouldn't say that we are the best city to live in, but we're in the process of making our city a great spot for startups and for internationals to come and live here.
Awesome, dude. You made me want to visit even more.
You should.
I hope to. Explain. You talked earlier about like agriculture is one of the main industries in Colombia. Besides agriculture, are there any other like main industries that are kind of leading most of the economy right now in Colombia? And if it's just agriculture, then like what are the main kind of exports out of there?
Mm-hmm. So the largest here is, as you mentioned, agriculture, because of our different products that we have, such as coffee. Like people knows about coffee, Colombian coffee everywhere. So that's very cool, actually, that people knows this. The largest export here is also petrol, which people knows about it. But we have started to export services. So there's a lot of fintechs that are coming out of here. And probably you've heard of Rappi as one of the largest tech startups that came out of here. Nubank, which is the largest bank in Latin America, it is a Colombian founder, but he founded in Brazil, and then he came here, and now he's expanding all across Latin America. So I would say fintech is very big now, not only here in Colombia, but everywhere. Everybody's putting money into fintech on how to generate different financial solutions. But I would say that there's because of the challenges that the world is facing around climate change, there's a huge new wave of climate-based startups that have their solutions on nature. So there's a lot of regenerative tourism, there's a lot of research around things in the Amazon to understand how can we regenerate our forest, carbon capture, and different things.
Right there, you mentioned regenerative tourism. Now, obviously, I know what that is, but for people who don't know, if you could explain.
Of course, and actually, the also is very cool and very interesting for me, that because this is a term that is quite new. Actually, to countries like Colombia, there's big waves of people coming here. So most of the tourism that's happening, and we can see what's happening, for example, in Barcelona and in many cities in Europe, is that the tourism goes and it generates a lot of distress for the environment and for the people that lives there. So regenerative tourism, what is looking is that it provides an experience to the people that go to these places to also contribute to the ecosystem and the environment that is there. So, for example, here in Colombia, you can go and have a regenerative tourism experience in rivers where you support the hatching of turtles and take the turtles into the river. So you have a very nature experience, you contribute to something, and you get attached to the nature, which the theory is that you will then protect it. So it will generate a more conscious living in you. So regenerative tourism is this new wave of tourism, which provides an experience for people around tourism. Normally it's nature-based, and it incorporates experiences to allow people to contribute to the ecosystem that they're going to. Here in Colombia, mostly the Amazon, the mountains, and the oceans.
Nice. That summarizes it very well. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. You mentioned the digital nomads coming down there, so I wanted to ask you about that. Recently, Colombia implemented a digital nomad visa where you can live and work in Colombia for up to 2 years at a time without renewing it. I know this is very recent, but have you seen a lot of people coming down there with the digital nomad visa and like working there? Have you seen any changes because of it?
Yes, I've seen a lot of people coming here, and it has generated a lot of good stuff because there's an influx of dollars and euros coming into our economy and people that is spending more. So it generates good impacts in that sense. Somehow, I would say that it is a two sides of the same coin because there's a lot of people that comes here, but most of those people don't work for Colombian companies. So it's not like we are generating talent for Colombian companies. We're just becoming a spot for people to come and live here. And that has generated another impact, which is the increase in rent and gentrification of certain spaces. So I think as every initiative, it has its good things and its not so good things that we need to look into. But I think it has generated a lot of influx of new ideas, new solutions, and new things that people can think of here in Colombia.
I'd be very interested to see over the next like 5, 6, 7 years how it plays out, to see if those people that move down there and, as they start getting ingrained in the culture and learning Spanish and meeting other startup founders who are Colombian and working on Colombian startups, I'd be interested to see how many of them maybe start working for a Colombian company or start a startup in Colombia, and then, grow from there. So maybe, half of them, they might be working for another company and just living in Colombia, but maybe might make that change later on to starting their own thing in Colombia. I'd be very interested to see in a few years, how that plays out. But I can't predict the future. So if I could, I'd be a lot richer.
Yeah.
So I'm currently, just kind of as a personal example, I'm currently working with a company in Japan to help get their products here in the US. But if I was interested in Colombia as a potential market, what are some good resources? Obviously, Impact Hub, would be a good first place to start. But what are some other good resources I could start with to kind of dip my toes in the water of Colombia and kind of, get some market research, some testing, and start off? As soon as I get off the plane, where are some places I should hit up to kind of learn more about the Colombian business environment?
Yep. So we have a national agency for supporting the growth of businesses and promoting Colombia. So there's actually two agencies. One is called Impulsa, INNPULSA, and it shows all the opportunities, programs, and everything to support businesses in growing here in Colombia. That's one. And the other one is called Pro Colombia, which is the agency in charge of promoting Colombia around the world, and it has all the information regarding what should you do to bring your business here in Colombia. So that's a huge resource that you should have. Of course, as you mentioned, we have Impact Hub. In the Impact Hub, we support in the landing process, in connecting with lawyers on how to legally start your business here, how to set up your invoicing and all the legal contracts that you can have in here. And specifically in Medellín, we have an organization, also a local agency that is called Ruta N, which supports the landing of companies here in Medellín. They even have a space at a very cheap price for international companies that want to land here. So that's a very good one to have in mind here.
Nice. All right, a great start. Awesome. Hopefully I get to use them one day.
And there's a great report that also you and the listeners could check on, which is the Startup Genome Report. I don't know if you have checked on it. And if you check Bogotá, they have Latin America and they have Bogotá as one of the biggest ecosystem. It shows the different organizations like the Bogotá Chamber of Commerce. And it shows you all the numbers and figures that are important for people that wants to come here and create a startup, like the time to an exit, how much is a seed round here in Colombia, which is very different from the United States. The top sectors, as I mentioned, fintech, e-commerce are the top sectors here. Why is it great to come here? So it is explained very well. I suggest that anyone that is looking to expand to a new country, Startup Genome is a very cool resource to check to understand the main highlights of a specific ecosystem.
100%. We actually interviewed somebody from Startup Genome a few weeks ago.
Amazing.
And so it's a like 300 something page report that they put out once a year on. There's multiple reports, but the one I like the best is the Global Startup Ecosystem Report.
Yep.
And it is very detailed. They talk a lot of good things about Bogotá in this year's report. So, got me excited for this. But kind of the last one, more of just a fun note. Talk to me more about, the differences between maybe Cali, Medellín, and Bogotá. What will I find there? Which ones would you recommend visiting, and like what's the different vibe in each place?
So Bogota, as the capital, is the most international one, and is where you're gonna find the most and best experiences in terms of culture, in terms of parties, in terms of food, and in terms of ecosystem size. Bogota is the place to be, but because it's also the largest one, is more chaotic, the traffic is crazy, going to one place to another is hard, and the weather is very rainy. I don't like the transport system in Bogota, but I think Bogota is the best place to be if you want to start a company or to land, because it's the largest market and is where all the decision makers are. Medellin is the second largest city. There's a couple of things that we have as an advantage. The first one is the weather. Our weather is very friendly. It's very, very warm here. So that's why global nomads tend to be in Medellin more than in Bogota, because the weather here is way better. So I'm gonna check again to say it in Fahrenheit. How much is it normally here? So throughout the whole year, it would be 75 degrees every day.
That's perfect.
So it's called the city of eternal spring. So it's 75 degrees. Of course, it sometimes go up, but it's normally 75. So the weather is great. The city is a bit smaller. Bogota is at 10 to 12 million people. Medellin is 5 million people. So we are smaller than Bogota. But we have a completely interconnected transport system that allows people to go very easy to different places. So it's easier to move in here. I would say people in Medellin are friendlier, but I found that people in Medellin are more closed to foreigners. Not in a touristy way, because we're very friendly, so we want to be of good service. But if you want to make good friends, it's not as easy in that sense. But there's some good companies here that you can make business with, but Bogota is larger. So Bogota is still a better market. So you live in Medellin because it has a better quality of life. You live in Bogota because there are more opportunities, right? And then is Cali. Cali is very focused in agriculture. It's the third largest business center in Colombia. From my own experience, doing businesses in Cali is not as easy, because what I found is that people are very ego driven, so they want to be the ones to do it, so they don't trust that much in the others coming. That's coming from someone in Colombia. Probably if you're from someone outside of Colombia, we have this thing that normally we tend to believe more in foreigners than in our own. So it might be easier that way. I have found that people in Cali don't speak that much English, so that might be a challenge. But people in Cali are super friendly, are super happy. They are the capital of salsa, so it's a great place also to be. It's also very warm, and the food in Cali is amazing because it's a combination of Pacific food, like seafood from the Pacific, African food that have come here. So it is a great place also to eat. So I would say that the three cities have its pros and its cons, and it depends a lot on what you're looking for in terms of personal and professional perspectives.
That makes a lot of sense. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time today, man. This has been a pleasure to get to meet you and learn all about Colombia and what you're working on and everything that's happening down there. Looking forward to more conversations in the future, and hoping to see things grow out of Colombia, and hopefully interview a few founders down there soon and see what they're working on and see how it's been raising money down there and growing. So, but that's all in the future, man. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Grant. Have a great one, and always welcome here, you and your listeners.
Awesome. See you around, man.
Have a good one.